Today we'll be taking a look at Bioshock 2's remaster on the PS4 and the Potato Masher, with some comparisons to the original PC version of the game thrown in. If you don't know, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and designed to compete with the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle. The goal is not to pick on consoles, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the same money. There's more info in the description, so let's get to it. I'll be referring to the three different versions of the game as the original, remaster, and PS4 versions. I'm running the original at very high settings, 1080p and 60 FPS. I'm also running the remaster at the same settings, although very high is a bit of a misnomer because the game's graphics menu doesn't really let you change much. If you watched yesterday's Bioshock 1 video, it's pretty much the same story. I'll start this by comparing the PS4 and PC remasters. Much like Bioshock 1, the two versions are very similar. Anisotropic texture filtering is still much lower on the PS4 version, but the game is newer and has better textures to work with, so the difference is a little less noticeable than it was in Bioshock 1. Reflections do appear to be a little lower quality on the PS4, and there might be slightly less bloom lighting. That last one is hard to be sure about because sometimes it just appears like the PS4 version has less contrast or is flatter, and in other places the differences in bloom are a little more obvious. With the exception of texture filtering, these differences are all very minor and not very noticeable unless you're doing a side-by-side comparison. Comparing the original game to either the PC or PS4 remasters, things are even more interesting. While Bioshock 1 looked quite different from its remaster, the original art style seems to have been better preserved in Bioshock 2. This could be because the game is newer and therefore it already has higher quality assets that needed fewer adjustments to look modern. There are two large differences between the original and remaster that are visible pretty much anywhere in the game. First, the remaster has reworked textures that are higher quality, but are also paired with some inclusion mapping to make surfaces appear grittier and more decayed. The second is that unlike Bioshock 1's remaster, Bioshock 2's water modeling and reflections look better in the remaster, at least in my opinion. There are also some changes to flora and fauna, and minor changes to object quality and terrain decoration, but these do feel more subtle than the changes made to Bioshock 1. Overall, all three versions of the game do look really good, and the platforms are closer than they were in Bioshock 1. Unlocking the frame rate, the remaster varies between 120 and 180 FPS at 1080p, with occasional spikes above 200 FPS depending on what's happening. Curiously, the GPU usage occasionally dropped to around 60%, and the frame rates followed, although they were still decently high. This only happened with the frame rate unlocked, but no other component I can monitor seemed to be stressed or bottlenecking the system. At any rate, the frame rates were always high enough that a G-Sync or 144Hz monitor would be a good match for the game. The responsiveness gained by reducing frame timing that much is very noticeable, and while recording limitations make it look a little twitchy in the video, I can promise you that it feels great when you're playing it. At 1440p, the Masher has no problem maintaining a very solid 60 FPS. Disabling V-Sync, the Masher can also hit between 90 and 120 FPS, which unfortunately means that a 1440p 144Hz monitor wouldn't be a great experience. A proper graphics menu would go a long way towards letting me tweak the settings to get the frame rate stable and high enough to make a difference, but it looks like 1440p and locked at 60 is the way to go unless you have a 96Hz monitor. At 4K, the Masher has trouble maintaining 60 FPS. In smaller corridors or interiors it's locked, but in larger set pieces there were drops down to the mid-30s and 40s. That's a bit low for a shooter, and therefore I don't think the game is a good experience at 4K on the Masher. When it is running well, it does look fantastic. Bioshock 1's remaster was very much a mixed bag. Thankfully, Bioshock 2's remaster avoids some of the same pitfalls and design direction changes, and is a more faithful upgrade to the original version. Even better, the original version is still very good, with high quality assets and no major issues other than mouse acceleration and a few bugs that carried over from Bioshock 1 and are largely fixable or a fix is on the way. While the PS4 has a few corners cut in order to keep its frame rate stable, and texture filtering is still annoyingly low, it's still very good. Like with Bioshock 1, there's no pressing reason to get the remaster if you own the PC version already, but if you get the free Steam upgrade, then treat it like a nice bonus. On any platform, Bioshock 2 is another great game that you should make time for if you can. If you enjoyed this video, check out the original build video or any of the other Potato Masher videos linked on screen. This project was started by the Casual Shenanigans Gaming Podcast, so click the link to check us out. You can support this channel and the Potato Masher project by tossing me a few bucks on Patreon. It helps me test new games quicker and better. So thank you all for your support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for Bioshock Infinite.